Good morning, everyone. Welcome and thank you for joining us for this Youth for Europe talk. Today, we will be discussing democratic Europe through active youth participation and youth opportunities with a very special guest. We have here with us is Mr. Fabio Massimo Castaldo, Vice President of the European Parliament. I will come back shortly to you, Mr. Castaldo.
Good morning to all of you, and thank you very much for this very kind invitation that I accepted with a lot of pleasure.
Thank you. The pleasure is ours. My name is Francesca. I am from Italy, and I've been involved in Youth for Europe project as a group leader during one of the youth exchanges which took place in Spain last year. And I'll be the host for today's talk. Here with us on the screen, we have some of the participants of Youth for Europe project. We have Alexandra from Romania, Camilla from Hungary, and Joshua from the UK. Thank you guys for joining us, and I hope you are excited to show Mr. Castaldo your proposals. I'd like to remind actually the audience that's following us on our Facebook group that they can write comments and questions, and if we have time after the discussion, we'll definitely try to answer to some of them. Before introducing our guest and jumping into the discussion, for those of you who are not familiar with Youth for Europe, I'll just tell you a little bit about the project itself. So Youth for Europe is funded by the Erasmus Plus program and the European Commission, and it brings together young people from Italy, Hungary, Romania, Spain, Germany, and the UK. And the main objectives of the project are firstly to give a chance to young people to play an important role in the European decision-making process through the development of some proposals as the ones that we will see very shortly. And secondly, it aims at fostering a space for advocacy and structured dialogue between young people and the European institutions, mainly around three main topics: education and jobs, media, and the environment. Let me tell you, Mr. Castaldo, that's been really, really inspiring to see the commitment and the enthusiasm of all these young people involved. There are over 100, and it's been really, really great to see. Now, as I mentioned at the beginning, today we are delighted to have with us our very special guest, who is a Vice President of the European Parliament and also member of the Committee of Foreign Affairs, among many other working groups, I guess, and delegations. He will tell us a bit about. And he also took part in several election observation missions, which I find very interesting topic, across different countries outside Europe. So this gives us a bit of a broader perspective. So Mr. Castaldo, our young people are really excited to meet you. And I would like to ask if you could tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey that brought you to the Vice Presidency of the European Parliament, and maybe a little bit also about your roles and responsibilities within the Parliament. And also, if you could kindly ask to a curiosity, which is, why are there 14 vice presidents in the European Parliament? Over to you.
Of course, dear Francesca, thank you very much for this very nice and wide introduction that was important to explain, of course, to all the friends what are the purposes of your action, your project. And I'm also really, really impressed by the commitment and the will that you are showing, of course, to make the difference. That's always the key factor of every success in our life. Let me start by saying that I have the honor to be member of the European Parliament since more than 6 years, actually, because I was elected for my first term in 2014 when I was just 28 years old. And now I'm 34, looking to become, unfortunately, very soon 35. So it seems that my youth is disappearing year by year, but still I could say that if I compare with the average of the rest of the members of the parliament, I cannot complain, of course, in this regard. A few things about me. I'm graduated in law. I did law studies in 2 universities, both in Rome, Tor Vergata, and the second University of Rome, and also in for the Erasmus program in Reims, in France. And then after that, 2 years after, I went for a double degree in law in Paris Est University in Créteil. So let's say that since the beginning, my career in the university, my path in this regard has been always very, very truly European, because I decided to focus especially in the European law and international public law, and let's say also with this very multicultural environment that can provide you the participation to the Erasmus project and to a double degree. And then I came back again for my third time in France for to finish double degree and to do my experimental thesis on a constitutional comparative law. And after that, I decided to involve myself as an activist in politics, and I started to do many activities for the movement to which I still belong since almost 10 years nowadays, I can say. And I decided, of course, to involve myself. And at the beginning, if somebody would have told me in a few years he would be elected as an MEP in the European Parliament, he would become vice president, I can confess with absolutely no problem that I would have told him, "Are you joking? This is not possible. You know very well that the European campaign are extremely expensive and difficult, especially in my country. We have big constituencies of millions of people. Just in my, since we have 12 million persons in the center of Italy. So, of course, this is something I was not even dreaming about when I started, but more and more, step by step, you can discover with the, let's say, with the commitment and with the really will to participate and to explain to the people, to try to reconnect people with the idea of active participation to politics, that even the most ambitious and the most incredible dreams can become true. And I can tell you that personally, when I started this experience, especially my first campaign cost in total 600 euros. And I just try to make the difference, especially turning around in the territory, making people, connecting with them, trying to answer to all the questions that they have about the European decision-making process that is often too much perceived as distant, difficult to understand, extremely complex. And after that, of course, I started this wonderful experience. And since the beginning, I decided to focus myself on my real passion. That means geopolitics, foreign affairs, and human rights, and the promotion and defense of human rights. So I started this adventure focusing especially in the Foreign Affairs Committee, also in the Defense Committee, in which I'm holding since the beginning a very important fight to make legally binding, and also with sanctions. There is so somehow with the presence of mandatory sanctions for those who do not respect all the criteria for the export of weapons from the European countries worldwide, because I think that it's not just about to promote some principles. We must be compliant with the principles we are promoting, and we must be totally coherent in our approach. And this is not always the case. That's why it's very important to set some goals and try to implement them in the European legislation, and also following very carefully all the activities concerning the electoral observation. I did my first mission just 2 months after I was elected. So as you can imagine, it was very exciting to go in Tunisia to see how they were implement this transition to democracy, the enthusiasm of people, especially of young people. At that time, in all the polling stations, a good 60-70% were students or young workers that were taking part to the process and decided to spend some of their time to really show that the democracy was totally entering into they were totally entering into the game of democracy, and there was a full compliance and respect with the principles of the Constitution. And that has been one of the most wonderful experience I had in the previous term. That's why then I decided to commit myself, and I've been observer in many countries, in Nigeria, in Moldova, I've been head of delegation in Montenegro, then again chief observer twice in Tunisia, both for the local elections in 2018 and for the presidential and parliamentary election in 2019. So exactly 5 years after my first mission. I've been also observer in Georgia, and in general, okay, I will not, of course, repeat all the list of the countries, but I've been traveling quite significantly. And then you asked, first of all, why we have 13 vice presidents and how did I became vice president of the parliament? I will start with the first question, technical one. Yes, we have a very wide and very big Bureau of Presidencies for a simple reason, because the European Union Parliament, our European Parliament, is not just an ordinary parliament. Of course, it has a specificity. The fact that we are coming from 27, I would say, unfortunately, because since the beginning of January, we're still 28, and still for me, it's very weird to do not see the British friends among us inside the parliament. Most of them, especially from the Greens and the Labour Party, were close friends. And I used to work very well with them, and it's still a bit shocking, let's say, that seeing that unfortunately the number is being reduced, but nevertheless, we are coming from 27 member states. And in this regard, of course, we should just have inside the Bureau of Presidency, not just a representation of the different political groups, but also a geographical representation of Europe, to avoid that the biggest countries will take all the possible seats just because they have more voters inside the parliament. So having 14, that is exactly the half of what it used to be the total number of member states, was a way to have this balance. And nevertheless, for example, you can remark that actually we have 3 Germans. That means, of course, that even with this correction, still the risk to have a overrepresentation of one country or another is still there. But this is absolutely the goal, and in general, it's improving the way in which we are showing that there is a real commitment on the geographical balance, and not just, of course, on the group balance, to have a fair representation inside this important body that is ensuring that the rules of procedure are implemented in a correct way, in a coherent way. How did I became, just to finish this introduction, how did I became vice president? Let's say that I did a huge fight for the respect of the rules, because when I started this experience in 2014, the group in which we were taking part of had normally, according to the customs of the European Parliament, was entitled to have 1 seat in the Bureau, because the Bureau of Presidency is not a political body in the sense that it should reflect the majority, but normally should reflect all the different groups and tendencies in the House, to ensure that the rules are applied in a coherent way. But that rule wasn't respected, and that rule was not accepted. So basically, my seat has been stolen in 2014. And then since then, I decided to commit myself to, because I can accept all judgment, I do not accept prejudice. And I say, it's not just because I'm young or I become to a small group that the colleagues could think that I'm not entitled, I do not have the skills to fulfill this important role. So I decided to even commit more and more myself in the daily working of the parliament, to take part to difficult and also dangerous missions, for this one in Nigeria, but also I've been the first MEP to come back to Libya in an official mission in 2018 too, with other 2 colleagues, to show that I really believe in what I stand for, and to show that I would have had all the skills required to be as a vice president of the House. Then there was a first by-election I ran, and for 9 votes I was not elected, just in 1 year later. But 2 years later, again in 2017, there was another by-election, because one vice president stepped back and went to the national politics in Germany. And then it was exactly this seat that was stolen to me. And so I said, this is the occasion in which we can restore a bit of equity and justice inside the House. I decided to run as an independent, collect support from many friends and colleagues. And let's say, even despite the fact that the biggest group sent the indication to the others to vote for, let's say, the other official, the liberal candidate, I got almost 100 votes more than my opponent, and I became vice president. And the same I did again in 2019. I ran again as this time really a full independent, because we do not have a group now, we are non-attached, and I collect signatures in support of my candidacy from colleagues and friends from many groups: Greens, GUE, SND, EPP, ALDE, ECR, a bit almost all, because I say this is a personal idea to continue on the work I've done, if you appreciated that. And again, I was re-elected, and I decided to, of course, to take, I asked the president to take the portfolio that, in my opinion, suits better to me, that is human rights and democracy, to continue, of course, the work I've done in electoral observation, plus the representation of the president for the UN and WTO. And again, last but not least, very important, also for the representation for the president in Latin America.
Wow, quite a hectic life, I would say, in the past few years you have had. That's extremely interesting. So thank you so much for sharing all these details to us. And I also want to thank you to bring out the example of young people in Tunisia. Again, when you were talking about your observation there, it means that there is not just a potential, but there is a need for young people to actually get involved more in politics, especially at European level. So this is fascinating, and we can certainly continue this discussion a bit later. And now I would say, without further ado, let's jump into the core of this talk, which are our proposals. So I'll pass the floor to Camilla, who will give us an overview of our group's proposal. Camilla, your turn.
Yes, thank you very much for having me here. Thank you, Mr. Castaldo, for dealing with our proposal.
Can I propose one deal? Can you call me Fabio? I prefer, because we are all young, so let's keep titles, vice president, Mr. and whatever. You can call me Fabio, and that's fine.
Okay, thank you very much.
Very well.
So I will share an infographic about our proposal. Can you see it?
Yeah.
Okay, nice. So our proposal title is No Information, No Opportunities. Basically, it's about what the EU can offer for the youth, and why is it not seen by the youth, and how can we manage this. So there are multiple opportunities for learning, trainings, jobs, volunteering, internship, and a lot of other things that the EU offers. And it is really, really good, because apart from encouraging the development of personal skills and competencies, also foster the exploration of the key values of the EU. But we detected two problems, and the first is that the EU appears to fail at carrying out its programs for the youth. And the other problem is the young people are really uninformed, and they might get the wrong impression about the EU, that they are neglected by them. So our solution is basically more marketing and promotion, and to make a more efficient way of distributing money. We would like to create a system with the help of the Eurodesk offices. So I think it's really cool, because the equipment is already there. We just have to make it move better. And we want to create active collaboration between organizations involved in EU programs and public educational institutions, with various types of targeting the attention of young people, like concerts or lectures, or something as simple as an informative poster. We know that the EU cannot have any with the schools, like it's the national system that have the power over the schools, but it's kind of like a bit of deal with the EU. Like for example, a university can apply for this and have all the previous Erasmus students, and give a road show across the country or something like that. We want to have a preference for less developed regions, and and the people with bad quality, because the EU basically is there for everyone and not just for the university students who have the information about them. And it is also good for the EU because people become more engaged and have a more feeling about being a European citizen and not just a national citizen of their own country. So basically, this is our proposal, and I want to hear what you think about it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Camilla. That was very interesting, and I hope that Fabio has found it interesting as well. I think Camilla's group raised an important point, which is information is there, but it doesn't get across and it doesn't reach the majority of young people. And I speak especially from the point of view of many of us living in small villages around. So we're not in the big urban centers and we don't have access to that. Like myself, I didn't know about any of these opportunities until I actually went to Milan for the university. So how do we get this message across? So Fabio, what are your initial thoughts about this proposal?
Thank you very much.
What are the strengths and weaknesses that you could identify and suggestions to improve it?
Thank you very much, Francesca, and thanks also to Camilla and all this group. Köszönöm, it's correct, I think, no, in Hungarian. Thank you very much. And let me say that, of course, you are pointing and you are underlining, stressing a very, very important point. Because in terms of accessibility, in terms of purely theoretical accessibility, we could say that in general, all this information are accessible. If you just have a look to the Europe Youth Portal and all the information that are and the opportunities that are normally mentioned there for young people across Europe, including all that's relating to the field of learning, jobs, mobilities, volunteering, internship, trainings, and how to reach and to contact, of course, young people. We have already a portal in terms of Erasmus Plus. Also, most of the activities of youth outreach projects in the field of education and training, youth and sports are still accessible on the Erasmus Plus project result platform. And also for the European Social Fund project database, we have information of the previous funded projects for the better education in the EU. So let's say that all the parts of the puzzle are already there. The difficulties is just to merge together and to make it attractive. Because if many youngsters have difficulties in orienting themselves with so many acronyms for so many projects, sometimes they do not understand exactly what project is standing for, what argument. There is a bit of overlapping and confusion in this regard. So the weakness, of course, is that all these platforms are not reunified in a bigger hub, in another platform that is making easy to reorient for the user and for the youngsters that probably do not have a specific strong knowledge of the progress of the European Union, and probably do not have, of course, all the basic knowledge that we as more active citizens we have, but it's especially even more important to attract the participation of this kind of target of persons, those one, as Francesca was saying, that are living a bit abroad from the urban center, that have less opportunities and less occasions to stay connected with the European programs and to take part of that. And I truly understand, of course, how much this is important. So my opinion, in general, what we should try to do is to explore the possibility to have something more attractive, like an app or something more smart, to make this information easier to access, more attractive, and more immediately accessible without the previous need of research on Google or any other, say, engine that will allow them to find that, or without a long search before. So I think this is the core and the most important aspect of your project. I saw that you are proposing to create this kind of app. And in my opinion, I totally agree. This is something that we are experiencing very easily in nowadays in daily life. Since you have a app, you are much more fostered and pushed to go into the direction of use that daily and check. If you every day you have to open every single website of every single platform, maybe this is not something you are going to do every day, but every week or every 15 days. This is something that is going to engage, of course, much more the youngsters. I think also at the same time that would be very important to use this kind of tool also to engage more and the participation of and the representation of the young people in the decision-making process. I will speak maybe later about a project I implemented since 2014 with the European Parliament. That is the creation of the Young Leader Program. It's a program with which we are working with the counterparts and the friends, young political leaders and leaders from the civil society of third countries of the EU, to engage them and to push them to be more active and more proactive, of course, in political life with proposals. And the sense of this initiative, of course, was to meet them in contact with the unilateral, bilateral, and multilateral forum. One example of multilateral is the work we are doing with the Western Balkans, with which we involve all the 6 countries that are now trying to reach the European family, and to some of them they are already candidates. Some others like Bosnia or Kosovo, hopefully they will be in the future. And it is working very well in terms of connection and in terms of network we are building up. We created youth caucus in every single parliament of the 6 countries and so on. But what is a bit the outcome that it was making me a bit sad, that many of them, they say, yes, we are preparing excellent manifestos, excellent proposals. We are submitting them to the leaders for their analysis before every summit, but we do not see a follow-up. We do not see that this is going to be implemented and to be effective to change the political agenda and to reorient this on the topics that are most important for us, like brain drain or, of course, the lack of employment, foster research, foster investment in education, foster investment for universities. So I think that this app could be used effectively also to launch campaign and to create some direct democracy or participative democracy tools that will allow to the youngsters also to do surveys or to promote actions that should be directly submitted to the European Commission for an appreciation to the competent Directorate General and to the competent Commissioner, and maybe imaging also through this platform a kind of question times. For example, a commissioner can come once per month or once every 2-3 months, let's see, and to answer to the questions of the young people that would like to rise up about the works he's doing daily, not just in the interest of the European people, but also with the specific focus is pushing on the needs and on the goals of the youngsters. So this is, in my opinion, would be a very interesting idea to explore and to maybe to implement if such a kind of app is going to be created, and that will be to the young people all the space and to show their convictions, to show the path and the direction they would like to express in the European politics, and is extremely and more helpful nowadays in the moment in which the Europe is at stake. It's at stake for the political integration process that is not finding easily a new impulse and a new strength to go ahead and to solve some of the asymmetries that are still unresolved in the last years, but also is at the stake for this very troublesome health crisis of the corona and all the economical consequences. So we need, of course, this commitment, we need this will, we need to see this enthusiasm from the European perspective and project, and that can come just from the clear commitment and space for the discussion for the young people. Because in fact, nowadays, what we are doing is discuss the future of Europe and who's going to live. in this future of Europe. We are going to live that, not persons with all the respect of 70 years old that are already in the last part of their cycle of life. So we are the most interested to raise our voice, but we need space for that, and it should not be just theoretical space or a formal space without any impact. I think that the pressure should be perceived by the decision makers, by the governments that are blocking some process in the council, by the commissioners when they are thinking about a new proposal for a legislation that is going to affect our reality and our quality of life. And I truly believe that this could be a useful tool in this regard, to also to educate persons and to educate young people to the active participation. And they should not lose trust and faith in taking part to the politics, in making the difference.
Thank you very much, Massimo. It's been a very well detailed feedback, I would say. And you also gave us additional ideas or links to do related to this proposal. So I truly think Camilla is happy as well. And this actually gives me the opportunity to still talk about direct youth participations in politics and decision-making processes. And I'll pass the floor directly to Joshua, our second participant, who will present something about his group's proposals named the European Youth Advisory Board.
Before Joshua starts, can I ask just a small question?
As well.
I was a bit curious to know why
Sure.
Camilla's team has this name Cipolla team that in my language means onion.
Yes, I know. We had some Italian participants, and we were just thinking about some name. And later on, we created this as an anagram, like citizenship, politics, and something I don't remember, but we made up this word somehow, and we remained Cipolla. And I think this word is really cute in Italian. So.
Okay, the importance is that the project at the end will not make us cry, but it will make us smile. So then.
I hope not as well. But Camilla, please let us know really the whole acronym, because I'm curious as well. So I think that would be very, very interesting to know.
I foster all your curiosity, I would say.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning, Joshua.
How you doing? I'm here, I'm representing the European Youth Advisory Board, and we would like the European Union to finance and help create a governing board for the European Commissioner consisting of 56 members from 28 countries for young people. I have an infograph, so let me get that up. Is that up and clear?
Yes.
Okay. So we would like to highlight the importance of youth participation and how the more we participate and gain political awareness, the more we become educated. The youth has seriously, there's been a shift, and we believe that we have now come into an era where we have been forced to, we've been forced to understand politics. And for that reason alone, we believe that this so-called youth union would be, we should set up our own democratic system and election to bring in young people from each country to discuss their problems in regards to unemployment. This is because we believe that not all issues can be tackled on a universal level, but requires extreme pedancy. And a problem we've seen with the EU is, like Camilla was saying, was like the lack of transparency within the EU structures, which tends to scare a lot of young people away from politics, scare them away from youth participation. Now, our action is, we believe a free and open space for youth representation within this youth board, and we should be able to create consultancy sessions in order to define the main priorities for whichever country is at hand. Our final claim is we want to show you that the situation we face is more serious and we need immediate solutions, as being a young person in today's age is getting harder by the minute. Giving us the opportunity to help you provide us with better jobs, better services, and just a better overall life. And that is our proposal and policy.
Thank you, Joshua, for showing the infographic of your group's proposal.
And I'm sorry if I went through that really fast. Apologies for that if I was speaking extremely
fast. It's okay. I think if Fabio has further question, he maybe can ask you a bit later. I would say you raised a very good point as well. So we're talking about direct youth participation within the European mechanism. So sure. Fabio, what are your thoughts about it? Can you foresee a scenario where these can actually become a reality?
Thank you, Francesca, and thank you, Joshua. Don't worry, you were not so fast and nor so furious. So
it's still early. It's still early in the morning in the UK.
Very well, no problem. It's okay. And I would say that I appreciate also the way in which you were introducing this because it looks like a real flyer of campaign. So you were very synthetic, but going straight to the point that can be really, really effective in trying to spread good ideas and to attract supporting for that. Let's say that Francesca asked which is the space in which we can try to play. Do we see that coming, that we could implement such a body to create a new tool for the youth to participate in the decision-making process? Yes, I do believe that, and I believe also that what you said in this manifesto is extremely true and interesting. The fact that we are trying to do general strategies for all the European Union, but the situation inside the member states is quite different sometimes. We cannot compare the situation of the south of Italy with the situation in Finland, on the situation in Poland, or the situation in Spain, in north of Spain, or in France. It depends. Even inside the same country, sometimes we are experiencing a sensible difference and a sensible and a sensible also let's say spread between the conditions of the youngsters and their concrete possibilities to find a job or to continue their education. So I think that the right framework to think about the implementation of this youth union and this advisory board could be inside the framework of the EU youth dialogue that I was talking before, and to create a specific table board focused on unemployment, and I would say it's with a specific target. You didn't mention that, but I truly believe that this is one of the key questions of the need. These kind of young people that are excluded both from the work perspective and the educational one. And unfortunately, this community is rising up with different percentage, but in all the countries we are experiencing this kind of situation. And I think that we need a specific tailor-made in every single member state strategy to identify what are the weakness points in the educational system, in the welfare state, that are creating this huge risk for youngsters to be totally excluded from any perspective of their life. And I would like also to say that we need a specific attention on this point. I think that having such a consultative body could be with both young students and young workers to take on unemployment, and also to speak about the relationship between the labor market and private sector and the education, universities, Institute of Excellences could be extremely interesting. Also to, on one side, to get more elements and from those ones who are really experiencing these difficulties in their daily life, but also to spread best practices, because eventually we could say that in Denmark or in Sweden or in Lithuania or in France, there are already pilot projects very interesting that are getting in producing good results. And maybe we don't know that in Italy or Greece or in Romania or in England. So this is also could facilitate a certain contamination among the member states based on the experience that the members of the board are going to bring as added value, expressing and explaining what are the strength point and the weakness point of their national model. I think also that it would be very important to ensure that there is a good and balanced way to select the members and the person that are going to take part of this, to ensure also a rotation, maybe on a daily, sorry, not daily, but yearly, with the yearly model, to have every year a rotation, and to ensure, of course, that there will be more space for the representative to take part, and not just, let's say, one member that was going to stay with for a term of 5 or 6 years. Maybe could be a bit too much in that case. For the specific role of this consultation, would be better to have quite a good rotation every year. I saw that you were thinking about 2 members for member state. That could be, of course, nice, because it's giving a bit, it's using the same model that is used in the federations. As the Senate of the US, for example, is based in exactly the same model. Disregarding the size of the country, you still have 2 senators as representative of the state, because it's going exactly the sense of the representation of the states and the federation, without giving too much weight to the bigger one. And I think that if on one hand somebody could say that it's a bit unfair because Germany has 80 million of inhabitants, Malta has a bit more than 500,000. On the other side, I think that could be a good experience also as for the values that is expressing, and for the idea, of course, to connect that a bit for with the project and the goal to have one day one federation of the European states. So it's nice. I like. We should work a bit in that in the way we are going to implement, how to ensure democratic and very transparent way to select the representative for every member states in the role, and how it's going to interact, of course, with the decision-making process. Is if it should be a consultative body, as it is, for example, nowadays the Committee of Regions and the European Social and Economical Committee, that has let's say mandatory opinions, that is producing mandatory opinions from the Parliament and the Council. But of course, you know that the weak point in this case is that the institutions, the co-legislators, are not obliged to follow that opinion.
Of course.
They are just mandatory in terms to be produced. They should be submitted, but then of course the co-legislator can decide to go elsewhere. This is a reflection. Let's also by maybe try to analyze different models in which we could implement this. But I think still I'm convinced, and I will really close with that, could be really inside the framework of the EU youth dialogue, and also to think about how we could interact with some initiative like the European Parliament of the Youth. It is already existing since many decades. So we should also try to create a framework that is coherent and is not creating duplication, but to enrich with a specific focus, not duplicate, not to do overlapping on the initiatives. And if you want to go maybe with a paper much more in detail, what they are thinking about the different options, I will be glad to read that.
I can send it to you, don't worry. I don't mind sending it to you.
Agreed. We have a deal.
Brilliant. I think, Fabio, you have already explained very clearly that the bones of the proposal are really important. They're there, and it's just a matter of finding the way to properly structure the idea. And as you're saying, using the existing institutional frameworks, basically. So that's very exciting, actually, if something like that could actually become true. And now, last but not least, we are going to Alexandra, who will share with us some very positive messages. So Alexandra, over to you.
Thank you. I will start by sharing my screen, and then we can continue. So our proposal, Where is the Love campaign, is aiming to increase positive coverage across all forms of media. In modern day media, the focus is mainly on negative subjects, which spread and sell faster than those of positivity. More and more, we witness stories of fear and hate, murder and violence, to the point where we have become desensitized to such atrocities. Also, the more hate is published, the more it is encouraged, which leads to an increase in discrimination, xenophobia, and barriers between people. Our idea is to create a multifaceted campaign which encourages people to recognize and share positive values, in turn, developing a sense of community, inclusion, and critical thinking skills in a creative and innovative way. We would make this happen by creating a toolkit, developing an app, and founding We Love Day. The toolkit will be delivered to education providers, both formal and non-formal, and also be available for the corporate sector. The participants will start their journey by exploring the idea of a group and why differences are wonderful and vital within society. Inspired by valuable stories and aware of the problems which arise through the distribution of negative aspects of media, they will have the chance to take action and influence others by creating and sharing positive content, which will be later part of the campaign. The app was inspired by an increase in negative social media challenges and violent videos being shared online. So to counter this, the app proposes positive challenges to users, which could also create beneficial habits directly in people's lives. Finally, We Love Day would be held each year on May 27th, and it will be all about spreading positivity through all forms of media across all of Europe. Media corporations would also be encouraged to focus on good news stories. So we would like to promote the campaign mostly through social media and by creating partnerships with NGOs with similar values so they can share the campaign with their own audience. We may also partner with educational institutions, not only to work on the toolkit, but also to help develop the campaign itself. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Alexandra. Sorry, I had the mic off. Can you hear me? Yes.
Yes, we can.
Thank you. Really inspiring indeed. And we do need some positive messages, especially now more than ever, I would say. Alexandra's proposal is very much linked with mental health and fighting hate speech, crucial right now in these unique circumstances of the COVID emergency, especially. So Fabio, over to you, a feedback about it. And to also, if you can elaborate a bit more maybe on to what extent do you think a digital campaign can help to raise the voice of young people?
Thank you very much, Francesca. Mulțumesc, Alexandra. It's extremely interesting. I really enjoyed also the graphic you were creating a bit to give the idea in this presentation of what you are talking about. I truly believe that also this is another very, very, very sensible topic, the one you are speaking about, because it's especially in moment of crisis, economical crisis, and in this case, of course, on the consequence of the COVID emergencies, we know that unfortunately the inequalities that are already existing in our society are going to be increased and are going to grow as faster than usual. And this is of spreading not just some kind of negativeness, but also is spreading a polarization inside the society. There is always the large community of persons that are entering, even if they are not, let's say, professional haters in the social medias, they are trying to look for responsibles, that are trying to look for people and categories to be blamed of the responsibility of what is going on, because they need to express their frustration. And on the other side, I do truly believe that only the strategy of repression, of criminalization of this behavior is not the only part of the solution. We need active actions to promote the culture of positiveness and a kind of commitment that is going to, an involvement that is going to send another kind of message. And what I liked a lot in your proposal is not just the fact that you wanted to bring awareness in the specific section you were speaking about, to discover what a group is, why differences are beautiful and vital within the society, that in somehow it's the core of the soul of the European Union. Is just our motto, unite in diversity. And it's exactly true. The diversity is a richness. It's not a limit. It's not something that you should be blamed for. On the contrary, it's something that's enriching all the others that are enjoying this cultural richness, but also the fact that you are pushing so much in taking actions, in being involved. So you are creating multitask and multi opportunities for why people should understand with the brainstorm of their idea, with their concrete commitment in creating templates and guidelines, and also in creating positive models to be exported, best practices in which they are trying to show that every single action matters, to create this culture of the respect, this culture of the constructive dialogue, instead of the culture of hate speech and polarization in general. So I like a lot the way in which you are shaping, and the fact that you like to think about a possible cooperation with the social media and creating partnership about the NGOs, because I think that there are a lot of strength and energies that are already in the field. But as we were saying before, for the other program, that if I'm not wrong, it was no information, no opportunity. We need to put them in a coherent framework and system. If everything is a bit left to episodic actions, campaign, and so on, you will not have strong effects that are going to going ahead for years in long-term perspective. This is a bit what I'm worried too. For example, to have a look of what we established at the European level with the Code of Conduct in 2016. It was created and thought about cracking down the hate speech, but some companies in this regard so far, they have pushed back. In 2018, Facebook, for example, refused to remove Holocaust denial content inside the platform. And this is a very extremely bad precedent, because it means that from positive commitment we were trying to push with the code of conduct, they became just voluntarily, or they became just an optional. And this is not acceptable, because democracy and freedom of speech should also find an adequate framework inside which you can benefit and enjoy this kind of right. Otherwise, instead of being a real right, it's going to be a way to deny the rights of the others, and to spread fake historical information that are going to jeopardize the public opinion on the regard of very delicate subjects, as of course the Holocaust or the fight against discrimination. I think so that in this case, from a just voluntary code of conduct, we must go to a real regulation. But this real regulation should have two pillars. On one hand, should speak about the repression of the violation, of course, of the rules that are going to be set. But on the other hand, on the promotion on a different cultural approach in this regard, because the best way is always the prevention. The prevention goes hand in hand with education, goes hand in hand with the idea to spread this positive commitment, and to understand that there is no better teaching than learning by doing. And in this case, if you have these kind of sections in which people can really commit themselves and do small project, but really effective, small table groups of discussion, which they are going to meet also with persons from the other corners of Europe, and to understand that if in one hand there are some differences that are enriching us, in the other hand we have a lot of similarity, common values, common vision, common sensibilities that are making us a great community. and a great family. This is going really to help to bridge to bridging the gap, and also to fill the gap somehow with the concrete actions. I saw that in Germany, since 2017, there is a law that allows the authorities to find the social media company who failed to remove hate speech that are violating the German law within 24 hours, and can be fined up to 50 millions of euros. And as I told you, criminalization could be a part, but it's not, of course, the real solution, because it will not modify the approach of the common persons, will not spread this culture of respect. I do really believe that, especially in this moment, we have to try to speak about positive models to be implementing about this idea, of course, that hate speech cannot be just criminalized, but it should be removed through education. So I really enjoy your project. I think it's very well conceived. And in this regard, let's think about how we could try to again implement. And I have also the idea, and that could be very, very important to involve, as I told you before, NGOs, to try to see if there are already elements we can recover and to put into a more detailed framework as the one you are proposing.
Thank you very much, Fabio. Really inspiring indeed. And I couldn't agree more actually with what you said. And I have the feeling actually that a collaboration between young people and European institutions is actually possible, which is the core goal of Youth for Europe. Unfortunately, as all things come to an end, we have to wrap up our discussion. So first, let me thank Alexandra, Camilla, and Joshua for presenting their proposals, and also all the amazing Youth for Europe team, which is in the backstage and making sure that all of this could happen and make sure everything runs smoothly. So a big thank goes to all of them. And the heartfelt thank you goes also to Fabio for having given us the time and having stayed with us. Fabio, one final takeaway message, actually a call to action. If you could encourage our young people to be more active and raise our voices, what would you tell them?
I will tell them a story, and it's a short one, but I think that you will really enjoy that. As I told you, when I created this program of young leaders, I was full of enthusiasm, and I want really to deliver and to make the difference for all these young politicians and young leaders of civil society that in many countries are still facing the difficulties of breaking societies in which they think that to do politics you must be by default an old person. It's not acceptable to have a youngster directly committed, but also sometimes they're facing limitation to their freedom of speech, limitation to their freedom of opinion. This is something, unfortunately, we are still experiencing in our world, and is going worse and worse, since most prominent leaders are advocating in favor of the end of multilateralism, in favor of the end of the culture of dialogue, coming back to a very muscular approach and a very tough approach in politics, both, and of course in international relationships too, and for foreign affairs. Well, let me tell you that story. One of the biggest result I can really enjoy of this program was the dialogue between the Israeli and the Palestinian young leaders. I still remember in 2015 when we held the first meeting in Brussels, the atmosphere that we had inside. We are speaking about two communities that from both sides have been educated to hate each other, do not understand each other, to see the other side of the table as a mortal opponent that is just coming to deny the existence of the other. And when I started that meeting, I was feeling such a big tension, such a big and impossible and very tough wall in the middle of the table. I was saying, how I will be able to create a really common ground and a dialogue. And we start to have the discussion. Then suddenly a Palestinian young boy raise their hand and say, I want to give you a question. Because I say, because it's not my first time I'm having experience with the European institutions. And I'm sure that once more, you will come here and will teach us a lesson, how we are going to live, how we are going to do, but you don't know nothing. You don't know anything about what is our ordinary and daily life, about what does it mean to stay in an occupation, about what does it mean to suffer the violation we are suffering, about to cry about for the death of our beloved ones. You are just here teaching theoretical lesson and saying things that are obvious for you, but they do not have any real impact of our life, because we are experiencing something much more different than your ordinary lives. So we consider that you are a prominent person of the European Parliament. Tell us, what is the solution? Come on. It was challenging me, really, directly. What is the solution? What is the ideas for what you are advocating? What is the worst enemy for peace among between our two people? Then I took 30 seconds to reflect, and my answer to him was, I think that I really believed with all my heart that I was not there to teach any lessons, but just to create a common dialogue between the two sides, because I say I'm not the one who can deliver the solution. You must build up together the solution. And if you are asking me what is the biggest enemy, the biggest challenge for the peace between your two people, well, I will tell you, is the surrender to the status quo. Is the idea that nothing will change, that you will be condemned to continue, and the same fight and the same tensions and the same hostility of your mothers and fathers and grandfathers and grandmothers, the idea that there is no space to change the path of history. And I'm seeing that some of you already surrendered to the idea, but we are trying to build up in a neutral environment in which you do not feel the pressure of your public opinion on politics, on any other structures above you. We are just creating the atmosphere and the space in which we are just young people discussing something that's much more bigger, but the future will be in your hand. In a few years, maybe you will be decision makers. You will be entitled from one side on another to try to change this path of history. So I truly believe that I do not give you the elements. You will have to take benefit of this occasion to try to build up. And suddenly, he was a bit shocked. It was not the answer he was expecting. He was expecting something like, I don't know, the two-state solution or any other possible models that are discussing actually by the international community and in the UN framework to solve the issue that are unfortunately stuck for the lack of diplomatic and political commitment from both sides. And he changed his mind. We broke a part of this hostility, and day by day, I saw that the atmosphere was changing. Then I met them just 1 year later, and it was amazing what I observed. The atmosphere totally changed, because in the meanwhile, some of the Israeli went to stay for 15 days, for 3 weeks, in the house, in the family with some of the Palestinians, and also the contrary, on the opposite side, they started to do small but very effective pilot project of cooperation to foster the dialogue and to create the space from one side and from the other side to do the difference. And they really discovered that this culture of hate was dividing them without any real purpose, because they had much more in common. They said, what you told us was true. We are not condemned to follow the steps and to follow the direction of our beloved mothers and fathers and ancestors. We can, of course, try to do something different. And the same protagonists, they were totally cooperating as it was the most normal thing in our heart, in our earth. So why I'm telling you this story, why I wanted to mention this, for a simple reason. Sometimes we feel that we are too much young to make the difference. Sometimes we think that we are too much isolated to make the difference. We feel like a small good in an ocean. But in fact, on the contrary, together, if we do not surrender to the status quo and we start to believe that these kind of dreams and this kind of happiness can become true, we can actually make the difference. And you are already showing that, because you created an amazing group of young people, very committed from these different corners of Europe. You are full of ideas, you are full of projects. Do not surrender to the fact that somebody will come to you and will say, you are too much young to do this. You are, or maybe will put an arm on your shoulder and they will say, oh, thank you very much, that's very interesting, we'll discuss about that and we'll let you know. Okay? No, we can really commit and do the pressure together to make that change. It's really our responsibility. And I truly, truly believe that this example of young people that were breaking up totally the models in which they have been educated, trying to go on the other side of the wall and discover what is the real life of the others, and discover that we are humans above all, can give all the inspiration to commit ourselves, to do not surrender, and to bring those projects to reality. I will be glad to be beside you to help with suggestions, with idea, to create new bridges, and to do whatever I can to facilitate. But really, never hesitate to think that we can make the difference. We can make it true. That's what I just wanted to share with you.
Thank you so much, Fabio. That's been a very powerful story, and I'm sure it's been inspiring to all of us. So I definitely have nothing to add after what you just said, if not to say thanks again to everybody once again, and remind the people following on Facebook that there will be more Youth for Europe conferences. So please keep following us, and if you want more info, go on youthforeurope.com. I really want to thank again all the participants and Massimo. And we have obviously no time for more questions, but in case they will arise, we will be sending them to you. And okay, then thank you very much.
Thanks
you.
to you. Bye-bye. Have a nice week.
Bye.
Bye.
You too.